Diddy is finally going down for all of the terrible things he's done over the last few decades. But what other major stars are going down with him? The feds have made it clear in their indictment that not only did he allegedly commit evil villain level offenses, but Diddy wasn't acting alone. And when asked whether any other arrests would be made in this case, this is what the prosecuting attorney, Damian Williams, had to say.
So the investigation is ongoing. That means both as to him and to anyone else who we believe committed the crime with him.
It's important to note that the Southern District of New York is very selective with their cases. So if they're throwing the book at Diddy, it means they have the dump truck full of receipts to back it up. So who are all the celebrities being named? Which ones should we actually be suspicious of? And what the hell happened at these infamous freak-off parties everyone's talking about? Because not only is it worse than you think, but we've been missing the clues dropped by Diddy and his friends for years. Today, we are going to dive into the allegations and sift through Diddy's celebrity relationships to determine who is actually at risk of indictment themselves. Because what makes everything even more hazy is that Diddy was famous for throwing white parties, which were on the whole just regular parties. Like LA locals could often buy tickets to get in. But it's the after hours freak-off parties where things got jaw-droppingly nefarious. If you saw our first video about all the mysterious murders surrounding Diddy, you already know that we went far down this rabbit hole, but we kept uncovering crazier and crazier threads, so we returned with our shovels to go even deeper. I'm talking forgotten interviews, deleted tweets, conspiracy theories that are now being proven right, and the court documents from not only Diddy's indictment, but past lawsuits that I haven't seen anyone talking about anywhere. Fair warning, this is a deeply disturbing, twisted web of abuse, blackmail, and cover-ups. But after decades of hiding in the shadows, it's time for this truth to come to light. But for all of this to make sense as we sort out what major celebrities are also complicit in these horrendous deeds, the first thing you really need to understand is that Diddy is dangerous. Before all of Diddy's crimes came to light, the version of Diddy that was broadcast in the media over the last decade was a much softer, more dad/uncle-like persona. He's portrayed as the guy who took kids like Usher and Justin Bieber under his wing while they were nobodies and turned them into international superstars, a parent who talks about family trips and spending time with his kids, and a relatable dad whose biggest concern is his daughter's dating.
I don't know what you're talking about. My daughter's only 15.
They're not dating?
No, they're not. Not that they better not be dating right now.
But it's important to remember that image of Diddy was carefully crafted by PR professionals and years of distancing himself from his violent past. In reality, Diddy was at the center of one of the biggest and deadliest rap feuds in history.
Puff came back downstairs, he was heated. He said, something gotta change. I don't give a if Pac gotta die, Big gotta die, or Suge Knight go to jail.
And not only is his now incarcerated nemesis, Suge Knight, coming forward with new information, Diddy has been surrounded by a string of very suspicious deaths that we fully dove into in our first Diddy video. Like how everyone who even starts to write a book about him seems to wind up dead or at the very least in a coma.
You want to know what they all had in common, though? The survivors and the late of Uptown Records, they were all writing tell-all books. Andre was writing a book right before he died. Heavy D was working on a book before he died. And Al B. Sure was working on the documentary of his life. And then he goes into a coma.
Including his ex-wife and mother of his children, Kim Porter, who was about to write a tell-all book about her life and had allegedly just met with Diddy's former mentor, Andre Harrell, about an explicit tape involving Andre and Diddy. Kim suspiciously died alone in her home at the age of 47 from pneumonia? But as we fully dove into in our other video, pneumonia, pulmonary embolism, heart failure, they can all be side effects of poison, which Diddy's former assistant, Jaguar Wright, claims they found in Kim's toxicology report.
The first coroner's report that said that she died, it was ruled a homicide, and they found toxins in her body to prove that she had been poisoned. You know, they have poisons that create heart attack and pneumonia-like symptoms.
Side note, Jaguar is going to be popping up quite a bit because she was the first real Diddy whistleblower. And though some of her claims seem very out there, the police investigations have actually been proving her right. And fun fact, guess who was at the crime scene when Kim Porter's body was found? Corey Gamble, Kris Jenner's longtime boyfriend who has crazy Diddy ties we uncovered in our Kris Jenner video. Y'all, there is so much between Diddy and the Kardashians. I'll need to make a whole other video on just that. Point being, back in April, we found 7 deaths and 4 attempted murders all linked to Diddy. And now even more are coming out. And if you think the poison theory is wild, guess who allegedly is too afraid to eat in jail for fear of being poisoned himself? Diddy. So as we get further into the new evidence and all of these victims and possible accomplices and bystanders who said nothing, we do need to keep in mind why everyone was so afraid of him. It wasn't just their reputations and careers at stake, it was their lives. And the other thing we need to keep in mind is that there were 2 sides to every party. We've all been hearing about these freak-off parties, something I've never thought I'd hear a government official say.
Which he called freak-offs.
But before we get into exactly what those freak-off parties entailed, we need to establish that not every Diddy party was one, or at least not for most partygoers. Diddy's parties were infamous.
Ain't no party like a Diddy party.
Like, just look at how many celebrities were at Diddy's 50th birthday in 2019. It looks like a trailer for the most expensive A-list packed movie of the year.
Happy birthday to me!
Even though Diddy threw hundreds of parties over the decades and took a lot of pride in doing so, Diddy's annual white parties were especially well known, starting back in 1998 with only 200 guests at his Hamptons home. Diddy described it as the craziest mix. Some of my boys from Harlem, Leonardo DiCaprio after he just finished Titanic, I had socialites there and relatives from down south. Sounds pretty innocent, but by the time he threw his last white party, specifically in 2009, co-hosted by his unexpected bestie Ashton Kutcher, we'll get back to their weird relationship later. When you said white party, people in Hollywood immediately thought Diddy.
This is the legendary white party. It's the real white party.
But as you can tell by this Diddy speech the Daily Mail dug up, there were points in his parties that were even kid-friendly, at least until a certain hour.
To all the kids have like an hour left. So get extra comfortable, kids, because after that, y'all gotta go. It's a wrap for y'all, because this thing turns into something that when y'all get older, y'all don't want to come to.
So it was after the kids left, right? Well, even then, a lot of people allegedly didn't know that the freak-offs were going on. For one, Diddy threw a lot of parties, so according to actor and comedian Brandon T. Jackson, Diddy wasn't even there the whole time. So he could safely make an appearance at these A-list studded parties by following Denzel Washington's advice.
Denzel always told me we'd be at the parties. He said, you leave 30 minutes for the devil get there. Okay? Always remember that Denzel would leave the parties early. And I followed Denzel out.
Denzel and Brandon weren't the only ones who allegedly left early. Marlon Wayans came under fire when people unearthed his 2009 tweet saying, quote, been doing Diddy's parties for 15 years and I must say you never let me down, Puff, unquote. But he's since claimed that he didn't even know the freak-offs were happening.
I've been to plenty Diddy parties. I left early. I swear to you, I've never seen
The stuff that they claim to be going on.
I never seen it. I never, those aren't the type of parties that I go to. I don't frequent those type of parties. And even if I go, like I said, I've never seen any of this. I'm like, when I hear about it, when did that happen? Yeah. At what time did this go down? Because I was there till 3:30. You mean 3:32? So they waited for me to leave. Like, all right, good. That Wayans nigga's gone.
Yeah.
He talked too much.
Granted, I don't consider leaving at 3:30 early. That's way past my bedtime. But it does make sense that if Diddy felt like someone like Marlon was going to be a problem, like Diddy couldn't manipulate him or he knew he'd expose their freak-offs, it makes sense that they'd wait until he left. Because what we do know from people coming forward is Diddy was selective with who he pulled into his dark and twisted inner circle. One alleged partygoer, Tony Wilrich, who's known as the Gay Crip, explained he was specifically recruited to join the freak-offs, even though he didn't know what it entailed at the time.
PD don't reach out to you himself. He have his people reach out to you, so it can be confidential. You know what I'm saying?
So not everyone that attended a Diddy party is automatically complicit in these freak-offs, which might be named after Atlanta's Freaknik Festival. Well, the truth has been coming out in both the indictment and in the many witness testimonies. Back in March of 2024, when Diddy's house was raided, stories started coming out about ultra kinky after parties where people engaged in very adult activities. Granted, if everyone's consenting adults, then there's not much you can say, but what we're learning now is that consent was far out the window. I mean, listen to Diddy himself giving Conan party advice.
This is what you need to do. Women, beautiful women, of course.
Beautiful women.
Beautiful men for the ladies, of course. We need alcohols.
Right.
Alcohols.
Right. Not just one alcohol.
Alcohols.
Right. Just different
Plurals.
blend. You need the
Blends.
ladies, you need the booze.
You need some water. No, I don't know if guys have noticed this. Like, a lot of ladies drink water at parties. They just, you know, so you have, if you don't have what they need, they're gonna leave.
Right.
Gotta keep them there.
Right.
You need locks on the doors.
Okay, this is sounding kind of dangerous now.
It's a little kinky, but you know, rock with me, but just check it out. You need a lot of heat. A lot of heat. Yeah.
Heat. You mean that physically the place has to be hot?
You don't have no air conditioning.
No air conditioning.
No.
Why is that?
Heat affects the alcohol, and it also affects, like, you know, everybody gets a little bit more comfortable and loose. Builds up a nice little sweat.
Like, this man is using science to make sure people get drunker than they intend to at his parties. And Diddy knew there was something wrong with what they were doing too, based on this 1999 interview.
You're gonna hear about my party, they're gonna be shutting them down, they're gonna probably be arresting me, doing all types of crazy things.
So what did the feds find in their 2024 raid? Well, they finally revealed it, and it's not what you'd expect.
They seized firearms and ammunition, including 3 defaced AR-15s and a large capacity drum magazine. They also seized evidence of the freak-offs, electronic devices that contain images and videos of the freak-offs with multiple victims. And they seized cases and cases of the kinds of personal lubricant and baby oil that Combs' staff allegedly used to stock hotel rooms for the freak-offs. More than 1,000 bottles altogether.
Diddy's lawyers tried to claim that he just got a good deal at Costco, but Costco itself clapped back that they don't sell baby oil at any of their North American stores. Even Costco wants to be left out of this narrative. They also found, and I can't make this up, 784 dildos at his LA home alone. And if you're wondering what that would even look like, here's some agents standing next to their find. On a serious note, one DHS agent who raided Diddy's Florida home said based on what he saw, Diddy was, quote, just as bad as Epstein, only the worst sexual predator in recent history. The agents described rooms in Diddy's mansion that were clearly, quote, dedicated to sex, filled with cameras saying, quote, if you were in those sex parties, you were being recorded from every possible angle, including angles you wouldn't have known about, unquote. And that's even scarier when you hear stories about Diddy spiking people's drinks, like one victim who's come forward with a lawsuit, Adria Cherie English. She alleges that, quote, specific bottles of liquor were spiked with illicit narcotics and female workers at the party were encouraged to drink from those bottles, unquote. But it went beyond the female workers. A drug dealer who used to cater these parties claimed he always stayed away from the champagne flutes. And then, of course, there's this separate story from Nikki Heaton we can get into further in another video, where she claims that at only 19 years years old, Diddy gave her and her manager spiked drinks and then tried to assault her with Kanye West.
And it was weird because I noticed as I was standing there just like wondering what's going on, Diddy kept looking at me and Kanye kept looking at Lauren, and like they were exchanging glances, and I'm like, they're like watching me strangely. And I'm like, okay, let me pretend to drink, and like I'm not actually doing it. And like that seemed to like make them happy, like me like pretending to like join in. And immediately I'm like, there's something fucking in this drink. I don't know what to do. And I see my manager take a sip, and I'm like, fuck. 2 sips, and I watch her face flush. And all of a sudden, like I look over and she's speaking really loud and like making jokes, and I'm like, whoa, like this isn't her. Like she doesn't make jokes. She's fucking terrified of people. Like she doesn't even talk. And I was like, it's already hitting her. Like 100%, I just knew that the drinks were all laced with something.
And what exactly was happening at these freak-offs where Diddy was lacing drinks and literally upping the heat? Well, the indictment actually lays it out pretty clearly.
As alleged, Combs used force, threats of force, and coercion to cause victims to engage in extended sexual performances with male commercial sex workers, some of whom he transported or caused to be transported over state lines. Combs allegedly planned and controlled the sex performances, which he called freak-offs, and he often electronically recorded them. The freak-offs sometimes lasted days at a time, involved multiple commercial sex workers, and often involved a variety of narcotics, such as ketamine, ecstasy, and GHB, which Combs distributed to the victims to keep them obedient and compliant.
Diddy's employees would stock rooms with supplies like baby oil and even set up good lighting ahead of time like a film set, which tracks because Diddy was secretly filming everything. They'd coordinate travel for everyone. I mean, Diddy even owns a private island he creatively calls Love Island that I'm sure they used for this illicit behavior too. It was a whole operation. The indictment even mentions they would often need IVs after these multi-day freak-offs filled with ketamine cocktails and other drugs. So with all this alleged footage, it's no surprise that since Diddy's indictment, black market tapes have been surfacing around Hollywood. Adria's attorney, Ariel Mitchell-Kidd, even confirmed it.
Yes, there already have been tapes leaking around Hollywood, being shopped around to individuals in Hollywood. But one particular person contacted me to shop a particular video they were in possession of, and to contact the person who was in the video to see if they were interested in purchasing the video before it became a public knowledge.
I've heard this before, so like a catch and kill.
Catch and kill, correct.
Wow. Can you, and I guess you can't reveal the person who is on
No, I can't explain who the person was, but Mr.
High profile?
Mr. Combs was in the tape, and this other person is, I would venture to say, more high profile than Mr. Combs.
Really?
More high profile than Diddy? That's a relatively short and very star-studded list.
I've seen stills of the video. The other person in the video is very visible. It's no question if it's that person in the video, and I can tell the video is pornographic in nature. This was actually in his Atlanta home. The person isn't like looking into the video, so it's, to me, doesn't seem like that person knows they're being videotaped.
So now we know what the elusive freak-off parties were, but how did Diddy even recruit people to be in this situation in the first place, if they truly didn't want to be there? Well, he wasn't afraid of using blackmail to pull people into his circle too. The truth about just how often Diddy used blackmail to get his way is starting to pour out. Just in the last week or so, clips have started popping up left and right, some new and some old but overlooked. Like Aubrey O'Day's interview on Call Her Daddy all the way back in 2022.
Diddy fired me.
Why?
Not for the reasons he said on TV. I don't know legally what I can say or can't. It's everything you could imagine why somebody would want to fire somebody. I wasn't willing to do what was expected of me. Not talent-wise, but in other areas. You signed 1 million NDAs and 1 million contracts that took away all your rights, so you really were operating in an environment that you had no control in.
Sounds a lot more legit now, doesn't it? But Diddy didn't just go after his artists, as one reporter unfortunately found out.
I knew this man for decades. I interviewed him many times. I went to some of his PG-rated parties. Many years ago, someone I loved immensely needed a break, and I called Puff and I said, hey, can you take my family member on as an intern? And he did. For about 3 months, everything went great. The internship was very exciting, and then one day it abruptly ended after Puff said to my family member, either come home with me for the night or the internship is over.
Diddy had no limit to how far he would push the envelope, because at the end of the day, if people did try to speak out, they were labeled crazy like Jaguar Wright was for so long. That, or Diddy would leverage whatever tapes or info he had on them to keep them silent. His blackmail and power over people's careers was essential to keeping his whole empire afloat. And don't forget, this is still the man who's suspected to have had all those people killed. Lawyers in the latest SA lawsuits have said their victims' assaults happened from all the way back in the 90s to as recently as 2022, and many only felt comfortable speaking up once Diddy was behind bars. And honestly, I don't blame them for taking Diddy's spoken and unspoken threats seriously. Because in our analysis, we found out Diddy wasn't afraid of blackmailing anyone, even a cartel. We know the feds are prosecuting Diddy for human trafficking, which some people have tried to write off as the prosecution stretching the truth.
Feds are just looking to take down Diddy because he's a successful black man. And when they couldn't nail him for anything related to taxes or his business empire, they started poking around in his bedroom.
But in actuality, it appears Diddy was consciously trafficking people, like in a big bad movie villain kind of way. And he was willing to threaten a cartel to do it. There have been over a dozen lawsuits against Diddy in recent years, some of them getting more attention than others, but one that people didn't pay attention to made my jaw drop. Alfredo P. Gonzalez, a now incarcerated member of the Sinaloa drug cartel, sued Diddy back in August for $666,000, clearly making a play on the number of the beast. Why the lawsuit, you might ask? Defamation and loss of profits in his drug dealing business. So you can see why the judge tossed this lawsuit. You can't sue someone for damages when what you're doing is illegal. But check out Alfredo's claims on how it all went down. Allegedly, on May 5th, 2021, Alfredo received a call from one of Diddy's, quote, business partners, who told Alfredo that Diddy was wanting to set up some business deals with the Sinaloa cartel. Alfredo said he was always willing to set up business deals with the rich for drugs, but Diddy's business partner said Diddy was, quote, looking to make a deal to get some young girls/boys for a party in New York. Alfredo replied that the cartel does not sex traffic underage kids, but the business partner kept pushing and told Alfredo he had nothing to worry about because Diddy had everything on lock. And even though Alfredo said no, the business partner allegedly came back again asking for help getting underage boys and girls over the US border, and even offered that Alfredo could, quote, come to the party and watch the shows they put on. So if this man is willing to wage war with a cartel over his desire to traffic kids, how bad was he to the victims he did end up successfully trafficking? Diddy's control over his victims was extensive and all-consuming, and there's evidence to prove it for multiple victims, as prosecuting attorney Damian Williams confirmed when answering this question.
It's mentioned plural in the indictment, but can you specify the number of victims just for this particular indictment?
Unfortunately, I'm not able to provide either. The number of victims, you are correct. We are intentional in saying multiple.
So we know there are multiple people who who suffered this abuse the feds laid out in the indictment. And there's been 11 other lawsuits circulating. But that number is growing even bigger than we could have imagined. When lawyers Tony Busby and Andrew Van Arsdale put out a call for Diddy victims after his arrest, they received over 3,000 responses in only 10 days. Even when they narrowed the pool to only survivors with credible evidence to back up their claim, that still resulted in over 120 lawsuits in Miami, Los Angeles, and New York. And the even more appalling thing is that the survivors' ages at the time of the abuse ranges from 38 all the way down to 9 years old.
This individual, who was 9 years old at the time, was taken to an audition in New York City with Bad Boy Records. This individual was sexually abused, allegedly by Sean Combs and several other people at the studio in the promise to both his parents and to him himself of getting a record deal.
And a lot of survivors are attributing their courage to one of the first survivors to speak up, who the indictment is widely thought to be centered around, Cassie. After meeting Diddy professionally in her late teens and signing with Bad Boy Records, Cassie dated Diddy on and off for over a decade. But in 2018, she shocked the music world when she filed a lawsuit accusing Diddy of rape, repeated physical assaults, forcing her to fornicate with sex workers, and plying her with drugs to control her. Since then, footage has come out of Diddy chasing Cassie out of a hotel room in only a towel, kicking and beating her, then dragging her back into his room by her hair, furthering Cassie's claims, as well as other victims. But according to Diddy's indictment, he would take things even further than physical abuse to maintain control.
Combs used others to help conceal his abuse by monitoring and preventing victims from leaving a location in order to hide their injuries, or by locating and contacting a victim who had attempted to flee.
And if you're wondering what they mean by monitoring victims or preventing them from leaving locations to hide injuries, his ex-wife Kim Porter can give us some insight. Like we saw in our first video, Diddy's ex-employees have been claiming Diddy tapped Kim's phone for years.
To wiretap someone's phone or put taps in their homes just to monitor their conversation, that's a sign of insanity. He know everything she doing.
And there was even a time Diddy allegedly broke Kim Porter's nose while boating in 2005 and then flew in a plastic surgeon to covertly fix it. It aligns exactly with Cassie's claims that Diddy would hide her in hotels for days at a time to let her bruises heal after his abuse. And let's not forget the bit where the indictment says Diddy's associates would even locate and contact victims who attempted to flee. He was like a mob boss sending his capos to do his dirty work. Honestly, there are so many cases and counting that we'd have to do a whole other video at least just to dig into them all. But trust me, it is horrifying. Like Joy Dickerson-Neal, who alleged that Diddy recorded raping her while she was a college student, or Lisa Gardner, who accused Diddy and R&B singer Aaron Hall of raping her at 16, and then she alleged Diddy came to her house the next day and choked her till she passed out. Or Thalia Graves, who alleged Diddy and his bodyguard drugged, bound, beat, and brutally raped her, all while recording. And then there's the Lil Rod suit we talked about in our last video that includes everything from SA to Diddy allegedly covering up either Diddy or his son Justin shooting Justin's friend. I can't even fathom what these victims were going through, knowing Diddy's violent past while experiencing his violent present. You can see why they truly felt there was no way out, and that was in large part due to Diddy's accomplices. So, who were these accomplices we keep referencing? And how high up does this thing go? Well, some names have already started to come out, and the list doesn't look like it's ending anytime soon. But we've dug into many of the celebrities being tied to Diddy, from Megan Fox to Justin Bieber, to see just how much validity these accusations and conspiracy theories have. Lil Rod started the first big wave of names when he filed his lawsuit in February 2024, before the raid on Diddy's home. But not every name signifies nefarious activity. Like Prince Harry is named simply as an example of the kind of foreign dignitaries Diddy's accomplices could have access to by helping him keep up his ruse of extravagant A-lister parties. But Lil Rod never implies Harry knew about the freak-offs or did anything wrong. Cuba Gooding Jr., on the other hand, allegedly groped Lil Rod with video evidence, and Lil Rod claims Diddy was grooming him for Cuba. Young Miami is mentioned in two capacities. One, she's listed as one of the freak-off participants Diddy had on payroll, alongside Daphne Joy, Stevie J, and Jade. And two, Young Miami's cousin allegedly assaulted Lil Rod in 2022. And then there's the CEO of Motown Records, Ethiopia Habtemariam, and the CEO of Universal Music Group, Charles Grange, who are accused by name of profiting off Lil Rod's exploitation. And they're not even the only CEOs in hot water as the Diddy truth comes out. There have been multiple brow-raising resignations within days of Diddy's arrest. September 16th, Diddy was arrested. September 17th, Kevin Liles, CEO of Warner Music's Elektra 300 Entertainment, resigned after 20 years at the company. September 18th, Kaz Kobayashi, CEO of Warner Music Japan, stepped down without a named successor. And then September 19th, Randy Goodman, CEO of Sony Music Nashville, announced his retirement. Like, the timing feels a little too close to chalk up to coincidence. At the very least, you'd think Randy would have picked a different week as people started pointing out the first two very sus resignations on Twitter. But when you focus on celebrity friendships Diddy's had over the years, things get even crazier. I can't even fully get to all of these, so if I miss any or if you want us to go deeper, please let me know in the comments. There's Steve Harvey, whose friendship with Diddy is a whole rabbit hole, including Diddy dating Steve's daughter Lori and even meeting up with Steve and his wife in Europe for a double date. There were even claims Steve fled the country, though scanty fact check, they're false. Of course, there's Usher, who was likely a victim himself, being recruited by Diddy at a young age. And Jaguar, remember Diddy's former assistant, backs that up.
People look at Usher, they don't see that. They're not seeing the victim. They're not seeing that boy that got rushed to the hospital.
I didn't know Usher was the one that had to be rushed to the hospital until people around Puff at the time told me.
And remember how Kim Porter was working on a tell-all book when she died? An alleged email from her stylist to a YouTuber at the time has surfaced. It reads, quote, "I met with blank this past Sunday evening, and she showed me the rough drafts Kim sent her. It will blow your mind." Unquote. The email goes on to allege that the shocking revelations would include Diddy getting Mary J. Blige pregnant, an explosive encounter between Diddy and Usher's mom, and Diddy giving Usher an STD. Unfortunately, that last part seems to track because both Diddy and Usher were later sued for spreading herpes, and in Diddy's case, the guy suing him won. But now with new info coming out, people are starting to wonder if Usher followed the cycle of abuse by perpetuating it himself with Justin Bieber, especially when you hear the second part of Jaguar's statement.
Diddy had been trying to get to Bieber for a minute, but it wasn't until Usher took over management and had guardianship and gave temporary guardianship to the diddler for 48 hours.
I don't have legal guardianship of him, but for the next 48 hours, he's with me. So, and we gonna go buck full crazy.
We're going crazy.
Does that sound like a good guy? To take another boy and put him in your place so it ain't gotta be you no more.
Honestly, the Justin revelations have been heartbreaking. With all the allegations that he was being exploited by Diddy and other celebrities behind the scenes, it makes clips like this take on a whole new weight.
You ain't been calling me and hanging out the way we used to hang out.
My voice sounded good.
You hear your voice sounds now? He's giving it everything he's got. But doing 86 shows for any vocalist is a lot to ask.
I did a shoot in the Bahamas with Justin Bieber.
How old is Justin?
16.
Do you have a crush on him?
If only he was 18.
18? Wait.
I am turning 30 this year.
This is like 5 years old. Y'all seen this with Justin Bieber and Odell Beckham in the club? comments, everybody knows what's up.
Diddy made Justin sleep with Jennifer.
Jennifer Lopez should definitely be charged.
We know Justin and J-Lo have been to Diddy parties together and been going for a long time since the beginning.
And speaking of J-Lo, back in 1999 when she was dating Diddy, she was at the club with Diddy and Shine the night Shine allegedly shot a woman in the face amid a scuffle. Many people have suspected Diddy pulled the trigger and Shine took the fall, but now Lil Rod's lawsuit is alleging Diddy told Lil Rod that J-Lo was responsible for carrying the gun into the club on the night of the shooting. And Jaguar has backed up that allegation.
She had a gun in her pocketbook. She had gunshot residue on her hands the night that Natanya was shot.
And now Suge Knight is speculating J-Lo's appearance on some of the tapes the feds confiscated in the Diddy raid might be the reason for her recent divorce from Ben Affleck.
They go raid Puffy's house and they get all these videos of J-Lo doing this and J-Lo doing that. I'm quite sure they probably called the FBI, gave respect, a courtesy call of Ben Affleck. I'm quite sure they said, we want to show you some things. It's about your wife. And I'm quite sure he can never look at her the same. I'm quite sure they're heading for a divorce.
There's also rumors that 50 Cent leaked explicit tapes of J-Lo and Justin Bieber to the FBI, but that we couldn't find any real evidence of yet. Either way, could J-Lo and Ben's divorce be a smokescreen to divide their assets and keep Ben out of it? Time will tell, but knowing Diddy's extreme abuse, it does give a different context to the DV scene in This Is Me Now. Other suspected accomplices include Leo DiCaprio, who came to Diddy's first white party back in 1998. However, Leo's team has clarified that Leo hasn't been in contact with Diddy for years, and aside from Diddy's star-studded 50th birthday, Leo only went to a handful of Diddy house parties in the 2000s. Pink is another person who seems to be on the wrong list. Her Twitter account was wiped around the same time as Usher's, but while Usher tried to claim there were hackers, Pink hasn't really used Twitter in a long time, nor does she have any known ties to Diddy. Megan Fox, on the other hand, does have known ties to Diddy, so while her Twitter account has never been very active, people noticed she deleted lots of posts from her Instagram in May 2024. But honestly, if Megan was tied into the freak-off parties, given how over-sexualized she was in Hollywood at such a young age, it's more likely that she was a victim than a perpetrator. Then we have the people who got called out for unfollowing Diddy: Steph Curry, LeBron James, and Meek Mill, to name a few. Steph Curry, I honestly couldn't find much other than a casual, friendly tweet in 2017. LeBron has partied with Diddy over the years, so I'd say he's not off the suspect list yet. And then Meek Mill is a whole thing. Not only has he partied and worked with Diddy over the years, there's some sus clips, like Diddy calling Meek Daddy.
Man, you doing it, man. You deserve it, Daddy.
And Meek's own lyrics saying,
I hope they forgive me for what I did with Diddy.
And Lil Rod's lawsuit alleging a Philadelphia rapper who dated Nicki Minaj, so Meek Mill, consorted with underage girls and sex workers on Diddy's yacht, and also allegedly hooked up with Diddy himself. It just puts Meek's defensive posts in a new light. And I promise I am not forgetting Jay-Z and Beyonce's crazy ties to Diddy, or how Diddy and the whole Kardashian clan, including Kanye, Corey Gamble, Travis Scott, and even Tyga, go way back.
Family!
What's up? You guys, look at our outfits. Whoa, you guys
Did you see what I put on this morning?
But there's so much there, we decided we need to dedicate a whole different video to them. So the last name I'll leave you with is a whole rabbit hole of his own: Ashton Kutcher. Remember how Ashton co-hosted the final white party with Diddy in 2009? Well, Ashton and Diddy were actually close friends in a sketchy way. Like, there's literally footage of them talking to underage girls on Tiny Chats, which was an Omegle-style site largely populated by teen girls.
That's it. That's all I got. Thank you. Thank you. Appreciate it. How y'all doing?
You got a pretty smile on, for real, with them dimples.
Thank you.
But they weren't just popping on the site. They helped raise $1.5 million for it in 2011. Of course, an Ashton insider, so probably his team, is now claiming Ashton absolutely regrets his friendship with Diddy. He feels lied to, betrayed, taken for granted, and manipulated. But considering he was close friends with both Diddy and convicted rapist Danny Masterson, and has ties to Scientology, and filmed that half-assed Danny Masterson apology video, and objectified underage Haley Duff on Punk, and has a history of using bogus statistics when talking about his charity, which is a whole other thing, the more you dig, I'm not sure how much I buy Ashton's supposed shock and betrayal. Either way, Ashton's team is seemingly on the offensive, with that same insider noting Ashton is terrified because Diddy could say anything, do anything, or turn on anyone to get out of jail time. As you can see, the list just keeps growing. And I really think this is just the beginning as the investigation continues. I mean, one person even called out.
Sometimes they'll offer immunity to people in RICO too to come testify against the big fish or the boss. And so if they were involved in this when they were young and now they've come out of it and they're a successful entertainer or rapper, singer, I think the feds would be more likely to give them immunity to come testify against him when they were kind of brought in by Puff Daddy and brought up and told this was the only way to get here.
Being a witness could get them off the hook with the feds by feeding them information about Diddy. And it lets some of the accomplices center themselves as victims before shit really hits the fan. I know that this was a lot, and unfortunately, we barely scratched the surface. I know we keep covering some really hard topics in these videos, but we do genuinely feel it's important to hold people like this accountable and keep getting this story out there as it unfolds. And as always, let me know if there's anything you want us to dig into further in the comments, because where there's scandal, there's Scandy.